Maria Rodriguez stands in the marble hallway of Westfield University's admissions building, clutching a rejection letter that might as well be her death sentence. Her worn sneakers squeak against the polished floor as security escorts her toward the exit, past oil paintings of distinguished alumni whose donations built these very walls. The admissions director's words still ring in her ears. Perhaps community college would be more suitable for someone of your background. What they don't know is that the man whose name graces the university's newest engineering building, the one whose endowment funds half their programs, sleeps next to her every night. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. They're about to learn that humiliating the wrong person's wife comes with consequences they never imagined. Maria had always believed education was the great equalizer. Growing up in East Hartford, she watched her mother clean offices until her hands cracked and her back ached, all while encouraging Maria to dream bigger. "Study hard, mija," her mother would say, folding Maria's school clothes with the same care she gave her employer's expensive suits. "Books will take you places these hands never could." At 32, Maria worked the morning shift at Sunrise Diner, serving coffee and eggs to construction workers and early commuters. Her uniform smelled perpetually of bacon grease, and her sensible shoes had walked thousands of miles between tables. But every afternoon, she transformed. Off came the apron, out came the textbooks. For the past 4 years, she'd been taking night classes at Hartford Community College, maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA while working 40 hours a week. The other students were mostly 18, fresh from high school with parents paying their tuition. Maria felt ancient sitting in those plastic chairs, taking notes on papers stained with coffee rings from her morning shift. When group projects formed, she often found herself partnered with whoever was left, the quiet ones who understood what it meant to not quite fit in. Her professors loved her. Professor Williams, who taught calculus, once told her she had the sharpest mathematical mind he'd encountered in 20 years. Dr. Patterson in chemistry would stay after class to discuss complex molecular structures, amazed by Maria's ability to visualize what others needed computer models to understand. They all said the same thing. She belonged at a 4-year university, pursuing the engineering degree she dreamed about since high school. The secret Maria carried made her situation more complicated than anyone knew. When she left work each day, she didn't return to a cramped apartment filled with textbooks and ramen noodles. She went home to a sprawling estate in West Hartford, where her husband of 5 years waited with dinner and endless encouragement. But she'd never told anyone at school about her personal life. She wanted to earn her education on merit alone, to prove she belonged in those classrooms, not because of who she'd married, but because of what she could achieve. David understood her need for independence, even if he didn't always agree with it. He'd watch her leave for her waitressing job in clothes that had seen better days, knowing he could write a check that would eliminate her need to work entirely. But he also understood that taking that path would rob her of something essential. Maria needed to know she'd earned every grade, every opportunity, every moment of respect she received. The application to Westfield University had been Professor Williams' idea. "Maria, you're wasting your talents at community college," he'd said, after she'd solved a differential equation that had stumped the rest of the class. "Westfield has one of the top engineering programs in the state. With your grades and work ethic, you'd be a perfect fit." Westfield University sat on a hill overlooking the Connecticut River, its Gothic Revival buildings and manicured lawns representing everything Maria had been taught to aspire toward. Founded in 1847, it boasted alumni who'd gone on to lead Fortune 500 companies, discover life-saving medications, and shape government policy. Walking across its campus felt like stepping into a world where intelligence mattered more than background, where hard work was rewarded regardless of where you came from. Maria spent weeks crafting her application essay, writing about growing up watching her mother's sacrifices and channeling that into her pursuit of knowledge. She wrote about serving coffee at 5 a.m. and studying thermodynamics by 7 p.m., about the beauty she found in mathematical equations and chemical formulas. She submitted transcripts that told a story of consistent excellence, recommendation letters from professors who praised not just her intelligence, but her character. The application fee cost her a week's worth of tips, but she paid it without hesitation. This was her shot at the life she'd been working toward, the chance to prove that Maria Rodriguez from East Hartford could stand alongside the best minds in the country. The weeks of waiting felt eternal. Every day she checked her email in the mailbox with increasing anxiety. Her community college professors asked about her plans for the fall, confident in her acceptance. David would find her at the kitchen table some evenings, staring at her laptop screen, willing an acceptance email to appear. When the letter finally arrived, Maria's hands shook as she tore open the envelope. The heavy paper stock and embossed letterhead looked promising. She read the first line with growing excitement. "Dear Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for your interest in Westfield University." But by the second paragraph, her heart had sunk to her stomach. "After careful consideration of your application, we regret to inform you that we cannot offer you admission to our undergraduate program at this time. While your academic record shows dedication, we feel that Westfield's rigorous curriculum might not be the best fit for your educational background and goals." The rejection felt like a physical blow. Maria read the letter 3 times, searching for some hint of encouragement, some suggestion that she could reapply or appeal the decision. Instead, she found only polite dismissal wrapped in academic language. They suggested she consider other institutions that might be more appropriate for your current academic preparation. The phrase, "more appropriate for your situation," stayed with Maria for days. She wondered what situation they meant: her economic background, her age, her community college education. Whatever it was, she wasn't ready to accept it as disqualifying. After persistent calling, she finally secured an appointment with Jennifer Walsh, the Assistant Director of Admissions. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon during what would normally be her study time. Maria asked her supervisor at the diner for the afternoon off, explaining she had an important appointment.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She chose her outfit carefully. A navy blue dress she'd bought for job interviews, paired with low heels that were practical but professional. Westfield's admissions building intimidated her from the moment she walked through its doors. The lobby featured marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and portraits of university founders who looked stern and distinguished. Students moved through the space with casual confidence, their designer backpacks and expensive shoes marking them as members of a world Maria was still trying to enter. The receptionist, a different woman from the one she'd spoken with on the phone, looked up from her computer with barely concealed annoyance. "Can I help you?" "I have an appointment with Ms. Walsh at 2 o'clock, Maria Rodriguez." The woman's expression shifted slightly as she checked her calendar. "Oh yes, you're the reapplication inquiry. Please take a seat. Ms. Walsh will be with you shortly." Maria sat in one of the leather chairs arranged around a glass coffee table laden with university brochures and magazines featuring successful alumni. She watched other visitors come and go, most of them parents with their prospective student children, all of them carrying themselves with the assurance of people accustomed to having doors opened for them. 20 minutes past her appointment time, Jennifer Walsh appeared. She was younger than Maria had expected, probably in her early 30s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a suit that cost more than Maria made in a month. Her smile was professional but cold as she extended her hand. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm Jennifer Walsh. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Please come back to my office." The office was designed to impress, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, diplomas from prestigious universities, and a view of the campus quad where students lounged on the grass between classes. Walsh settled behind her desk and opened a folder that Maria assumed contained her application materials. "Now then," Walsh began, her tone suggesting this was a routine conversation she'd had many times before. "I understand you have questions about your application decision. I want you to know that our admissions committee takes every application seriously, and decisions are never made lightly." Maria leaned forward, eager to understand. I appreciate that, Ms. Walsh. I was hoping you could help me understand what I could do to strengthen my candidacy for next year. My professors all encouraged me to apply, and I thought my grades would speak for themselves. Walsh's smile became more strained. Ms. Rodriguez, your grades are certainly commendable within the context of your current institution. However, Westfield University maintains very high standards. We're looking for students who can handle the intellectual rigor of our programs, who come from educational backgrounds that have prepared them for the challenges they'll face here. The implication hung in the air between them. Maria felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice steady. I've maintained a perfect GPA while working full-time. I've taken advanced courses in mathematics, chemistry, and physics. My professors have told me I'm one of the most dedicated students they've taught. I'm sure that's true, Walsh replied, her tone suggesting she found Maria's achievements charming, but ultimately insufficient. But you have to understand, Ms. Rodriguez, that we receive applications from students who attended elite preparatory schools, who have taken advanced placement courses, who have had opportunities for enrichment that community college simply cannot provide. We have to consider whether someone from your background would be able to keep up with the pace and expectations of our programs. The phrase, someone from your background, felt like a slap. Maria had heard similar language her entire life, coded words that translated to, people like you don't belong here. But she'd thought academic achievement would be different, that excellence in mathematics and science would transcend social boundaries. I understand that different students have different advantages, Maria said carefully, but isn't diversity of background valuable too? Don't you want students who have overcome challenges, who bring different perspectives to your programs? Walsh's expression hardened slightly. Of course we value diversity, Ms. Rodriguez, but we also have to be realistic about our students' prospects for success. Westfield has a reputation to maintain. Our engineering program in particular has extremely high standards. The students who succeed here are typically those who have been groomed for this level of academic work their entire lives. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, but Maria could see it was futile. Walsh had made up her mind before Maria even walked into the office. Every question Maria asked was met with polite deflection. Every achievement she mentioned was dismissed as insufficient compared to the caliber of students Westfield typically accepted. As the meeting concluded, Walsh offered what she probably considered helpful advice. Have you considered other options, Ms. Rodriguez? Perhaps completing your degree at the community college level or looking into vocational programs. There are many paths to success that don't require a traditional 4-year university education. Maria left the office feeling smaller than when she'd entered. The rejection letter had been painful, but this conversation had been humiliating. Walsh had made it clear that Maria's dreams were unrealistic, that someone with her background should aim lower, settle for less. She walked across the campus one more time before leaving, looking at the students who belonged there in ways she apparently never could. They seemed so confident, so assured of their place in this world. Maria wondered if any of them had ever been told they weren't good enough, that their dreams were too big for their circumstances. The drive home felt endless. When she finally pulled into her car, David's car was already there. She sat in her own car for several minutes, trying to compose herself before going inside. She didn't want him to see how devastated she was, how deeply the rejection had cut.
But David knew her too well. The moment she walked through the door, he could see something was wrong. "How did the meeting go?" he asked gently. Maria's composure finally cracked. Through tears, she told him about the conversation with Walsh, about the subtle but unmistakable message that people like her didn't belong at institutions like Westfield. David listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail she shared. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled her close and said something that would prove more prophetic than either of them realized. "Maria, they have no idea who they just turned away, but they're going to find out." 3 days after her humiliating meeting with Jennifer Walsh, Maria was wiping down tables at Sunrise Diner when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. The caller identified himself as Dr. Richard Thornton, Dean of Academic Affairs at Westfield University, requesting an immediate meeting to discuss her application status. His tone was urgent, almost pleading, completely different from the dismissive treatment she'd received from the admissions office. Maria agreed to meet that afternoon, though she couldn't imagine what had changed.
As she drove back to the university campus, she noticed something different about the atmosphere. Groundskeepers were working frantically to perfect already immaculate lawns. Workers were polishing brass fixtures that already gleamed, and staff members moved with an energy that suggested something important was happening. The same receptionist who had kept her waiting 3 days earlier now jumped up the moment Maria entered the admissions building. "Ms. Rodriguez, thank you so much for coming. Dean Thornton is waiting for you in the conference room. Can I get you coffee, water, anything at all?" The transformation was jarring. Maria followed the receptionist down a hallway she hadn't seen before, past offices where she could hear urgent phone conversations and the sound of papers being shuffled rapidly. Whatever was happening at Westfield University, her rejection had somehow become the center of it. Dean Thornton was a distinguished man in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He stood immediately when Maria entered the conference room, extending his hand with genuine warmth. Behind him sat Jennifer Walsh, looking pale and uncomfortable, along with 2 other administrators Maria didn't recognize. "Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for coming on such short notice. Dean Thornton is waiting for you in the conference room. Can I get you coffee, water? Anything at all. I want to personally apologize for any confusion regarding your application. It seems there has been a serious oversight in our admissions process." Maria settled into her chair, trying to read the room. Walsh avoided eye contact entirely, staring at her hands folded in her lap. The other administrators looked nervous, glancing between Maria and the dean as if waiting for a bomb to explode. "I'm not sure I understand," Maria said carefully. 3 days ago, Ms. Walsh made it clear that Westfield wasn't the right fit for someone with my background. What's changed?" Dean Thornton's expression darkened as he glanced toward Walsh. "Ms. Rodriguez, I want you to know that the treatment you received does not reflect the values of this institution. We pride ourselves on academic excellence and merit-based admissions. Your academic record is exceptional, and you should have been welcomed here with open arms." The dean opened a folder containing what appeared to be Maria's complete academic file. "Your professors at Hartford Community College have provided extraordinary recommendations. Professor Williams called you the most gifted mathematics student he's encountered in 2 decades. Dr. Patterson described your understanding of chemistry as intuitive and brilliant. These are not assessments we take lightly." Maria felt a flicker of hope, but also confusion. If that's true, why was I rejected? Ms. Walsh was quite specific about Westfield's standards and my inability to meet them. The tension in the room became palpable. Dean Thornton's jaw tightened as he looked directly at Walsh. "Ms. Walsh, would you care to explain to Ms. Rodriguez exactly what factors influenced your decision?" Walsh finally looked up, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Dean Thornton, I followed standard procedures. We considered many factors beyond grades, including institutional fit and likelihood of success." "Institutional fit," the dean repeated slowly. "And what exactly did you determine made Ms. Rodriguez unsuitable for our institution?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Walsh opened her mouth several times but seemed unable to form words. Finally, she managed, "Her educational background was different from our typical admits." "Different how?" Dean Thornton pressed. "She attended community college. She works as a waitress. We weren't sure she would fit in with our student body." The dean's voice became ice cold. "So you rejected a student with perfect grades, glowing recommendations, and exceptional test scores because she works for a living and chose an affordable path to education?" Maria watched this exchange with growing amazement.
3 days ago, she'd been made to feel like an intruder with unrealistic dreams. Now, the same institution was having a very public reckoning about their treatment of her application. Dean Thornton turned back to Maria, his expression softening. "Ms. Rodriguez, I want to offer you immediate admission to our engineering program with a full academic scholarship. Your achievements speak for themselves, and we would be honored to have you as part of our community." The offer was everything Maria had dreamed of, but something didn't add up. "Dean Thornton, I appreciate this offer, but I have to ask what prompted this sudden change?"
3 days ago I was told I wasn't qualified. Today I'm being offered a full scholarship? What happened? The dean exchanged glances with the other administrators. Miss Rodriguez, it came to our attention that our admissions process may have been influenced by factors that have no place in academic decisions. We're conducting a full review to ensure this doesn't happen again. What factors? Maria pressed. The room fell silent again. Finally, one of the administrators Maria hadn't been introduced to spoke up. Ms. Rodriguez, we became aware that your husband has significant connections to the university. The David Rodriguez Engineering Building was named in his honor following his substantial contributions to our programs. Maria's heart stopped. They knew about David. Somehow, they'd discovered the secret she'd worked so hard to keep, the identity she'd hidden to ensure her academic achievements stood on their own merit. "How did you find out?" she asked quietly. Dean Thornton looked uncomfortable. "Your husband contacted us yesterday evening. He was quite concerned about the treatment you'd received and wanted to understand how someone with your qualifications could have been rejected." The pieces started falling into place. David's late-night phone call, his grim expression when he'd hung up, his promise that they would understand what they'd done. He'd made good on his word, but not in the way Maria had expected. "What exactly did my husband say?" Maria asked. "He was very professional," Dean Thornton assured her. "He simply inquired about our admissions criteria and expressed surprise that academic excellence wasn't sufficient for acceptance. He didn't threaten or demand anything. He just asked questions that made us examine our processes more closely." Walsh finally found her voice again, though it came out as barely a whisper. "We had no idea you were married to David Rodriguez. If we had known, your application would have been handled completely differently." "And that," Maria said, her voice gaining strength, "is exactly the problem." The room went quiet as everyone processed her words. Maria stood up, feeling a clarity she hadn't experienced in days. "3 days ago, you looked at my application and saw a community college student who works as a waitress. You decided that person didn't belong at Westfield University, regardless of her grades or recommendations. Today, you discover I'm married to someone whose name is on your buildings, and suddenly those same grades and recommendations are exceptional?" She looked around the table at the faces watching her. "What does that say about your admissions process? What does it say about how you value students? You're not offering me admission because you recognize my potential. You're offering it because you're afraid of the consequences of rejecting the wrong person's wife." Dean Thornton shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Rodriguez, I understand your frustration, but I want you to know that our offer is genuine. Your academic record truly is impressive." "My academic record was impressive 3 days ago, too. The only thing that changed was your knowledge of who I'm married to." She walked to the window overlooking the campus quad, watching students move between classes. "You know what the real tragedy is? There are probably dozens of students like me who apply to Westfield every year. Students with exceptional grades and strong work ethics who get rejected because they don't fit your idea of what a university student should look like. Students who don't have powerful spouses to make phone calls on their behalf." The administrators exchanged uncomfortable glances. Maria could see them calculating the implications of her words, the potential for bad publicity, the questions that might be raised about their admissions practices. "Ms. Rodriguez," Dean Thornton said carefully, "what would you like us to do?" Maria turned back to the table. "I want you to review every application you rejected this year. I want you to look at students who had excellent grades but were turned away because they didn't fit your demographic profile. I want you to examine whether you're really admitting the best students or just the ones who look like they belong." She paused, organizing her thoughts. "And I want you to implement blind admissions for academic merit. Remove names, photos, and background information from the initial review. Let grades and test scores speak for themselves before you start making judgments about fit and belonging. The room was completely silent. Walsh looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. The other administrators were taking notes frantically.
"Those are significant changes," Dean Thornton said slowly. "They would require approval from the Board of Trustees, policy revisions, staff retraining." "Then you'd better get started," Maria replied. She gathered her purse and stood to leave. Dean Thornton rose quickly. "Miss Rodriguez, what about your admission? We're still offering you the full scholarship." Maria paused at the door. "I'll consider it, but understand that if I accept, it won't be because I'm grateful you finally recognized my worth. It will be because I've decided Westfield is worthy of my talents." The drive home gave Maria time to process what had just happened. David had kept his promise in the most elegant way possible. He hadn't demanded her admission or threatened consequences. He'd simply asked questions that forced the university to confront their own biases and inconsistencies. When she arrived home, David was in his study, working on his laptop. He looked up when she entered, his expression anxious. "How did the meeting go?" he asked. Maria sat down across from his desk. "They offered me admission with a full scholarship." Relief flooded his face. "That's wonderful. You deserve it." "Do I?" Maria asked. "Or do I deserve it because I'm your wife?" David closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. "Maria, you deserve it because you're brilliant, hardworking, and more qualified than most of the students they admit without question. The only thing that changed was their awareness of their own prejudices. But they wouldn't have examined those prejudices if you hadn't called," Maria pointed out. "Probably not," David admitted. "And that's the real problem, isn't it? How many other qualified students get rejected because they don't have someone to advocate for them?" Maria smiled for the first time in days. "That's exactly what I told them. I asked them to review their entire admissions process, to implement blind reviews for academic merit." David's eyebrows rose. "What did they say?" "They said it would require significant changes. I told them they'd better get started." David laughed, the sound filling the study with warmth. "And your admission?" "I told them I'd consider it, but only if I decide they're worthy of me." "And are they?" David asked. Maria considered the question. "Maybe. If they follow through on the changes I requested. If they prove they're serious about merit-based admissions. If they can show me that other students like me won't face the same prejudices I did." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden they'd planted together. "I realized something today, David. I was so focused on proving I belonged in their world that I forgot I have the power to change it. I don't just want to attend Westfield University, I want to make it better." 2 weeks later, Maria received a call from Dean Thornton. Westfield University had implemented new admissions procedures, including blind academic reviews and expanded outreach to community colleges. They had also reviewed applications from the current cycle and identified 15 students who had been rejected despite strong academic credentials. All 15 were being offered admission with financial aid packages. "We've also established the Maria Rodriguez Merit Scholarship," Dean Thornton told her. "It's specifically for students who demonstrate academic excellence regardless of their educational background or economic circumstances." Maria accepted admission to Westfield University not as the grateful recipient of special treatment, but as a student who had earned her place through academic achievement. More importantly, she had used her moment of power to open doors for others who might face the same prejudices she had encountered. On her first day of classes, Maria walked across the campus quad wearing jeans and a simple sweater, carrying a backpack she'd bought at a discount store. She looked no different from the woman who had been rejected months earlier, but everything had changed. She belonged here, not because of who she'd married, but because of what she'd achieved and what she'd demanded of the institution that had tried to diminish her.
As she entered her first engineering class, Maria thought about all the students who would benefit from the changes she had insisted upon. Students who would be judged by their minds rather than their backgrounds, who would have opportunities that had almost been denied to her. The professor began the lecture on structural engineering, and Maria opened her notebook, ready to learn. But she also knew she had already taught Westfield University the most important lesson of all, that true merit cannot be measured by economic status or social background, and that the most valuable students are often those who have fought the hardest to earn their place.